If you are diligently reading with your child at least 5 times a week, but you are reading the wrong book, that is probably why you are not seeing the progress that you would expect. My name's Colleen. I have been a teacher, a Senko and a head teacher for over 15 years now, and I have been the reading and phonics lead at pretty much every school I've ever worked at, so I really do understand the importance of choosing the right book. Reading a book is just like any other learning. If we are learning something new, whether we're an adult or a child, we need to understand the context of what we're learning about so that we can experience some successes, because that motivates us to keep going. But equally, there does need to be an element of challenge, otherwise we're not learning anything new. And that applies to reading. If your child is always coming home with a book that's way too hard for them, then actually they're not going to be motivated and they're not going to learn anything because everything is too overwhelming. But equally, if your child is always coming home with books that are too easy for them, they're not getting that element of challenge, they're not learning anything new. So you really do need to pick the book really carefully. When I choose texts or books for the children that I teach, I always think about 2 different things. The first thing is, are they going to be able to read this fluently and learn a few new words and then understand what they've read? And are they reading widely enough? Is this going to teach them about a new culture, a new era, or something they didn't really know about before? So let's start with being able to read fluently and understand what they're reading. When you open up a book and read with your child should be able to read most of the words on that page, and they should be able to read fluently. They should understand the punctuation and most of the vocabulary. However, if they can just read it completely fluently and they know every single word, it's not challenging enough. There should be a couple of words per page where your child doesn't know the meaning or isn't able to break it down, and you need to then support them with it so they're learning something new. And then when you get to the end of that page, just double check they can tell you what's happened on that page, whether they tell you verbally, write it down, or draw a picture to show it. They should be able to understand what's going on. If they can't understand what's going on, it may be too difficult for them. But equally, like I just said, if they know every single word, it's going to be too easy. You want that sweet spot where they're able to read it really well and tell you what's going on, but where they do struggle and they have to learn something new just a couple of times on that page. And that's how you know you've got the right book. If you're not sure how to find those books, you've got 2 options. Option number 1, you can just use Google. Google is great. You can Google your child's age and say, can you recommend some books for a 7-year-old reader? And it will just list a load of books for you. And then you know you've got roughly the right age range. If your child is below where they should be, you're going to have to play around with a few different age ranges to try and find which one matches them. And option number 2 is you can speak to the class teacher. Quite often the issues happen when your child becomes a free reader. When they are in nursery to middle of year 2, they're still on a scheme, and so the schemes are perfectly matched to their phonics ability, and so you're probably not going to have this issue. But as soon as your child becomes a free reader, they're really excited, they can go to the library, they can choose any book they like, but the problem is books still fit into the category of ages, even if they're a free reader. So you might find that your year 3 child is going and choosing Harry Potter because they're excited about it. But actually Harry Potter's really difficult, not just for trying to break down the words, but understanding the vocabulary, understanding the inferences, and also the punctuation can be really challenging. So what you can do is you can speak to the class teacher or teaching assistant and ask them to support your child with choosing the right book, because you don't want your child coming home with a Percy Jackson book when they're in year 3, unless they're a really great reader and they can understand all the subtext. That's going to be too hard for them. But equally, if your child's in year 6 and they're always coming home with Horrid Henrys and fairy books, and they're an age-related child, they're coming home with books that are too easy. So the second thing you can do is speak to the class teacher and ask that during those library slots, when your child goes and chooses a book, that someone directs them with which books to choose. That's always really useful. The next thing to consider when choosing a book is what your child's going to be reading about. So if you choose a book from another country, that's absolutely incredible because you want your child to read widely. But also, if, for example, you're reading The Girl Who Stole an Elephant, it's set in Sri Lanka, you're going to need to do a bit of research and have a discussion with your child about Sri Lanka beforehand, because otherwise they're not going to understand the context. So it's really important to choose books from different countries and different eras so that your child is learning something new. But before you do it, you might need a discussion about that. So if you choose a book like My Friend the Enemy, which is about World War II, You might want to just have a discussion with your child about World War II, when it happened and roughly what happened, the sequence of events. Otherwise the book might be too confusing for them. But it is so important you choose varied books, because that's going to help your child to have that challenge and learn something new. So that's what's really important when choosing a book. If you are still struggling, what you can do is you can DM me. My Instagram account is Colleen Teaches Reading. And you can speak to me about 3 options that I have. I do tutor children, so if you're interested in that, I'm getting quite full at the moment, but please feel free to message me. I also have an online community where I support parents with how to help their child with reading. So I coach you through what to do, and that works really well. It's called Raising Readers. And I'm also developing a course as well to support parents with what to do at home. So if you're interested in any of those 3 things, or you want to know a little bit more information, just send me a DM. You can say help, you can say reader on my Instagram, and I'll reach out to you.